Well, I've never tried this before, so I have no idea what's going on. I have like dual microphone set up because I'm worried about how the software works. So
Okay. I'm just
yeah,
using my laptop audio.
yeah. Well, that's fine. How are you? It's
Good.
been
How are you?
forever.
I know,
Where
right?
are you?
I'm
What
in my
room is that?
office. Our office.
I don't think I've ever seen that before.
When did you come stay here?
I was
That was
there
May.
before yeah, late May probably. Yeah.
Yeah. We had the office. I think Tyson's mom was here staying in this room though when you
Okay.
were here. Oh.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's
we
right.
can hear you. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, thanks for taking the time.
Yeah.
How's the book reading? How's the book reading going?
Oh, good. I have too much time on my hands. Actually, somebody asked me, how do you have enough time? And I realized my kitchen hasn't been getting cleaned because I've been reading instead of cleaning.
Well, there you go. All right. So just for the few people who doesn't know who I'm talking to right now, because normally you stay behind the camera, not in front of the camera.
Mhm. Mhm.
You are Mariah Moore. You've been working for CrossFit. Used to work for CrossFit for around a decade, I want to say.
Yeah, 5 years as an employee and then 5 years as an independent contractor.
Right, where you did a lot of big projects.
Yeah.
How many documentaries have you been involved with?
Uh, I would, I mean, I'm gonna count. Froning, Decade of Fitness, Redeemed and Dominant, 2018, 2021, 2022, so 6.
Wow.
Yeah, 6
Yeah,
CrossFit documentaries.
yeah, that's really
1 as an editor, 2 as a co-director, and 3 as a solo director.
that's kind of ridiculous.
Well,
Um,
busy 10 years.
yeah. Can you see the episode title?
Mm-mm.
No, you can't see it.
No.
It's because it's only on my end. It says, "Do the right things for
Oh,
the right
yeah.
people for the right reasons."
Yeah.
Mariah, who said that?
Mr. Coach Glassman.
Coach Glassman. You know, I bet like half my listeners have no idea who he is.
No, really?
Yeah, I think so. Because like
Uh,
they don't even know. Like people have such a poor history. Yeah, they don't
well,
care about the history of CrossFit.
I think the vast majority of people who do CrossFit don't care about CrossFit HQ or anything like that. I think it's the vocal minority that
Yeah,
gives a shit about HQ and what HQ is doing it. The rest of, I guess, I would have to say 75% of the people that walk into a CrossFit affiliate are just there to get a good workout in and see their friends.
which is what it should be like. Like
Oh, yeah, I agree.
all the other stuff is great, but it's the reason I started doing it was to get in shape and get healthy. Like
Yeah.
I had no idea. I had no idea my life was about to change when I walked into an affiliate because I was in good shape before, but all the other stuff, like all the friends and all the people, that's really what. Yeah,
Oh, yeah. I wasn't even I didn't know anybody when I started working at HQ. I remember, going up to visit HQ for the first time, after I had applied, so to, have my in-person interview, and I went with my local affiliate owner, Darren Savella, and he laughed so hard at me because after I left, I referred to Sherwood as Pat Barber. He goes, "Mariah, that's not Pat Barber, that's Pat
Pat
Sherwood.
Barber.
Like, you're gonna
Pat
have to
Barber.
get this right." And I was like, "I don't know. These are just names. It's a Pat and a Pat."
Yeah, Pat Barber, the Manimal, wasn't that what he was called?
I don't even know.
I think so because he had that beard. He was so hairy. He looked like an animal. I think he was called a Manimal, but whatever.
Sherwood was
But
pretty hairy too, though.
yeah, that's true. That's true. He was a games athlete actually. He competed in the '07 games. I think the
Sherwood.
first one. Yeah,
Yeah,
he did. I
something
think
like
so.
that.
The first one that was the one where Sevan did the first documentary. Every second counts.
Yeah.
Sherwood and not Sherwood. Sevan Matosian and who else? Someone else.
Carrie Peterson.
Okay, Peterson, of course.
Mhm.
Yeah. Let's just start a little bit chronologically, and I will stop you a few times because there is some stuff I want to talk about.
All right.
When when did you get into CrossFit? Like first of all, CrossFit and then CrossFit Media. What
Uh,
was that journey?
I got into CrossFit in 2012, which I think a lot of people got into CrossFit around that time frame, 2012, 2013, because I think that's when it really started to explode. So just a friend from high school, homeschool high school, invited me to go to like the soft opening for the local affiliate because it was opened by some family friends of hers. So I was like, okay, sure. And I went and instantly was addicted because I was homeschooled, but I did not grow up in an athletic family. And so I didn't play any sports or anything growing up, but I'm a highly competitive person. And so it was the first sport-like thing that I had ever done. And so I was instantly hooked and addicted. And so I started working out regularly. It was a few months before I graduated high school. So yeah, pretty early on.
How old were you this time?
18.
18.
Yeah.
And now,
Now
how old
I'm
are you now?
30.
I forgot.
30.
You're 30. Oh, I didn't mean to go there.
I just told Tyson like literally before I came up here. I was like, I'm starting to look old. He's like, what do you mean? I was like, I looked in the mirror and I don't look like I'm in my 20s. He goes, you're not in your 20s anymore. I'm like, I know. So yeah,
Yeah,
18.
I think that's different for men and women, that whole turning 30 thing. Like I know I've talked to my friends, like when they turn 30, it's like, oh, it's such a big deal.
And it's a
And for
weird
guys,
one.
yeah.
Not
You
because
have
of
three.
not because of anything shallow, but it's just like it's a weird one to be like just to say goodbye to that decade. You know, the 20s are really I mean the 20s kind of shape the rest of your life in a lot of ways. You know, a lot of people do a lot of really big things in their 20s. I did. So
Yeah, you did. You did 6 documentaries, made 3 kids. I'm still
made
gonna say
three
the
kids.
kids are bigger. Yeah.
Yeah. So it was a busy decade. So it was weird to say goodbye to my 20s. I'm really grateful to my 20s, but
How the
yeah,
kids doing?
they're
Is
great.
Mia hit her head yesterday? I was on the phone with Tyson.
But I don't know, probably. She fell off the bunk bed
Yeah.
afterwards, and then she's been complaining. And the thing that sucks is she just broke her arm like 6 weeks ago. Her
Yeah.
and Dayton were wrestling. She got like just a minor buckle fracture in her wrist. And so she's been having to wear this little like wrist brace, and now it's the opposite arm that she's complaining of that she fell on. I'm like, oh my gosh, if you have like 2 broken arms, I'm gonna lose my mind.
And how
So
did and how's Damon doing and little Lenny?
good, so good. They're a
Yeah.
handful. Yeah,
Yeah, well, you have 3 kids. It's what it's
I
like.
know. I love it.
How did you first get into CrossFit Media? Who introduced you? Was that Torn?
Yeah, it was Torn.
Yeah.
So Torn grew up in my hometown, Lompoc,
Yeah.
California, and when I started going to Ohana, his brother went pretty regularly, Gavin Simpson, and Torn would drop by and work out every time he was in town just to visit family. And at the time he was working at HQ, and I was pursuing film, and so I had started doing some videos for our affiliate just to, like as a trade for my
Yeah.
membership. And I started sending them to Torrin just to get his advice on them and his input and any tips and tricks he might have. And then at the end of 2018, he reached out to me and he was like, "Hey, CrossFit HQ is hiring. It's just an internship. It's a paid internship. Well, they called us interns, but it was a production assistant. It was an actual job."
Yeah.
He goes, I could throw your name in the hat if you would like send me your resume. And I was like, oh heck yeah, like I would love to do this. So I sent up my resume, lied on my resume about what my capabilities were because I knew what they were looking for.
We've all done that.
Yeah, I was like, I can figure all this out on the job. Like I'll figure it
Yeah.
out. And they hired me in December of 2012, and I moved up in January of 2013.
Wow. And then
Yeah.
you didn't go to the games in 13, right? No, you went in 14. You went in 14.
No, let me think about this. I think I might have actually. I'm off. I think I got hired at the end of 2013.
13, yeah, because your first
13.
games was in 14.
14. Yeah,
All
and
right, so
I had gone to the 2013 games as a spectator. And
right.
again, I didn't know who any of the athletes were. I kind of just went to go hang out with my friends from the affiliate.
Yeah.
And so I went as a spectator in 2013, but I worked my first games in 2014.
Do you remember 2014, like working the games?
Oh yeah. I remember being so tired. I remember waking up on like Sunday morning because at that point I was working in the trucks. I don't even remember what I was doing. I think I might have just been editing B-roll for the shows. Was I editing for you? I can't even remember. Like for you and
You were.
I think it might have been. I was editing for your guys' segment that you were shooting,
Yeah.
and was it Kayla that was on the on camera or somebody else at the time?
I can't remember who's.
I can't remember either.
Because I can do different stuff. I was like being pulled around. I even did some broadcast camera at one point because one guy called in sick. So I was on the field of play.
2014 you did?
Yeah. Because I was just being thrown around like he can do this as well. Okay.
I don't remember that. I believe it, but I don't remember that.
I just pulled up my Instagram because I wrote a story about this about it's over 3 years ago. I wrote this. It's a long and boring story, and then I went on a complete rant about life lessons. You can go and read it. It's on my Instagram.
Okay.
Assistant PAs, volunteers, be nice to them. Be nice to people in general. And then I ran on a little bit more. I ran on some more. Charlie, my boss, introduced me to a young PA. He looked younger than he actually was. I'm guessing he was 27 at the time. He asked me how I was doing and how my flight was, and he dropped some random knowledge about Europe, and he kind of impressed me. He seems to be the only person in the room who knew more about CrossFit than me. I liked him instantly, even though he was a Dallas Cowboy fan. He came over with a cup of coffee and asked me if I was hungry. Sure, I said. You like Mexican food? He asked. Yes, I replied. He walked out and came back 20 minutes later with a burrito from Rio Cafe Rio. If you know, you know. Any idea who it was?
Oh, yeah.
Tommy Marquez, and the story goes on. Then I ran a little bit more. Fast forward to 2014. Ranting. A young lady, 20 years old, I guess, came over and started talking. And I knew at this second, she was different than any other 20-year-old that I've ever met. An old spirit, if you will. She listened to me complain and say, dude, she calls me dude, super strange. Just text Tyson and ask for 2 extra wristbands. Your wife and kid can come watch. He'll love it because it's my son's birthday the next day.
Yeah.
I did, and they did. And my son spent the whole day with me, and he got to watch Froning win his 4th. The coming years, I spent more and more, no pun intended, yes, pun intended, working with this former PA, now turned videographer, editor, and she was very special and talented like no one other. But being female in this sport isn't always easy. But once again, being nice and kind to people seems to pay off. Don't get me wrong, she can rip your new asshole if you don't work hard enough for her. Any idea who she was? Hint, I now work for her, not the other way around.
I love that. That's good. That's a good write-up.
Yeah, it's way longer because there's all this crap in the middle that is kind of yeah. But you're kind of being stuck in a closet, basically just editing. What was that? What was that journey like to get out of that editing room, and how did you like climb the ranks inside CrossFit? Because it's not that easy in that environment.
You know, you say it's not that easy, but I felt like it was pretty easy, and not because of let me rephrase that. It wasn't easy. It just felt like it was in my control, though. Yeah. It wasn't like I didn't feel like I was fighting for anything. I felt like I was asking for more work. I was going to Charlie Doobie and being like, hey, can I pick up more work from Tyson, because Tyson was the one that was overseeing, you guys, the producers. And I knew that's what I wanted to be doing at CrossFit was storytelling. And Charlie was just, Charlie, just incredible and very much, invested in, his employees getting better and being better and pursuing the things that they want to be. So when I would ask for more work, he would, support me in that. Or if Tyson came to, Charlie and was like, hey, can I pull Mariah into this to help edit? Charlie was like, yeah, absolutely. And so he was very supportive in that sense. And so it was a lot of asking to do more. Let me do more. Let me show you that I can do this. And, let me try, and doing a lot of that. And so, just taking initiative and trying really hard to work really hard and to be nice and be someone that people wanted to work with. And I could, that kind of felt like that opened all the doors for me. People were much more willing and excited to bring me into things. because
And
I asked for it.
and do you remember? Because I always like think back about the old media team and
Yeah.
how I feel like it was such a different time back then.
Mhm.
Like who were you working with at that time?
Um, like within Tyson's team or within like
Yeah.
I mean, at the time it was, Ian Wittenberg, Heber and Marston, Torin, Glancy.
Oh, Jonathan Glancy is now with the Cleveland Browns.
Is he?
Yeah, he is.
Oh, I didn't know
I think
that.
he's like head of media for the Cleveland Browns.
No shit, didn't know that.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
And he got married. He got married as well.
no kidding. I never thought he'd
Yeah.
see the day.
No.
Yeah, Jay Vera.
Yeah.
I think Julian was still there.
Julian Marquez, also with the
Yeah,
Buttery Bros. Yeah.
yeah, Kerry Peterson. I mean, the team was pretty robust back then.
And so your boss was kind of Charlie, but above him was Sevan, I guess.
Yeah,
Wasn't it?
yeah. I mean, eventually, I remember working there when it was, at one point, why am I forgetting his name? I don't know. Like there was a handful of people that were media director for a hot second before it finally landed on Sevan.
Yeah.
But
And
yeah,
before him, I guess it was Tony Budding.
I came on right after Tony Budding left, so I
Okay.
never worked under Tony Budding. I've heard great stories and horror stories.
I have both, but yeah,
Yeah.
he's
Well, Tyson always, I'm very appreciative to Tony Budding because even though I don't know him personally and I never worked with him, Tyson has so much respect for him and is constantly,
yeah.
Singing his praises in the sense that he's like CrossFit would not have been what it was and what it is without Tony Budding because Tony Budding really helped change the game.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the history lessons people need to know. Maybe people aren't. He couldn't run the company today, where it's at today, but he helped lay some bricks for on the groundwork to make sure we can be where we're at today. And that's
Absolutely.
like that in any company.
Yeah.
Same with Greg Glassman. His time had to come, and he had
Mhm.
to move on. But without him, none of this would have happened.
Oh,
So,
for sure. For sure.
so people, when did you and Tyson get together?
We got together in the fall of 2015. So I think it was right, a little controversial, but anything went across at HQ. I think it was right after he brought me onto his team.
Yeah.
But I had always had a fat crush on him, so
Yeah. What was that? What's that like? Because being a woman, dating your boss,
yeah.
it's you've seen people's reaction, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, again, it was so different at HQ at the time. It was very much, let me pull it out. It's just a little dark. Yeah, it was very different. It was nobody cared at CrossFit at that point. We
No.
did our best to keep it really quiet. We did not act as though we were a couple when we were in the office. Actually, we didn't act as though we were a couple in front of any of our coworkers for at least a good year, maybe closer to 2 years. We tried to keep it under wraps as much as possible, just to be respectful of both of our professions and our coworkers and the workspace and all that. So everybody knew. It was, I think everybody got the sense. Everybody pretty much knew. And nobody cared. Again, nobody really cared. It was CrossFit HQ at the time. It was a lot of really hot people working with a lot of other really hot people, and so things just happened.
Sounds like the best workplace ever.
It was great.
Who asked out? Who asked out who?
Nobody asked anybody out. It was just at that time he was going through, very quietly going through a divorce, and him and I have always had a really effortless friendship. We always got along really, really well. And I think 6 months after his separation from his then wife, he came to me and he was just like, "Hey." And at that point, I don't know if you saw him at the games. He was like really skinny. Like he looked really
at the 15 games.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He was like crazy skinny. I think he had lost like 40 pounds, and everybody at the office, we all thought like he was sick. We were all really worried that he was sick.
Yeah.
And one day he came to me, or I was in his office chatting, and he was just like, "Hey, I kind of want to tell you something." And I was like, "What's up?" He goes, "I'm getting divorced." And it's like, Oh, okay. Phew. And he was like, what?
Yeah,
I
that
was like,
makes
oh
sense.
no, like I'm sorry that you're going through a divorce, but we all thought you were sick and dying. Like that's a divorce. Woof, that's a relief. We thought we were gonna lose you or something. And so we just from that point on, he was, I kind of became his confidant, and after a few months, we really realized that there was a real connection there, and things kind of just
Yeah,
happened naturally.
there's no
Mm,
turning back now.
no.
Um, I wanted to, yeah, I wanted to ask you this because what is it like being a woman is in this space, and especially when you put your name out there? Because in 2021, you got the opportunity to be the sole director
Yeah.
of the CrossFit Games documentary.
Hmm.
You brought me on to help you. I
Hmm.
appreciate that. Got me to America somehow. Well, Tyson did.
Hmm.
But there was a lot of negative chatter, and people like bring back Heber and Marston. We love Heber and Marston, so we're not talking trash about them in any sense. To make sure
Hmm.
on that. And I told you, don't ever read the YouTube comments. Don't ever read the comments on Instagram, and you did.
Oh yeah, that's a given.
Yeah,
Um, I think it's different now than it was back when I started. I think when I started in the CrossFit space, 10 years ago, over 10 years ago, it definitely felt it was a lot harder back then. I definitely felt like I wasn't as respected by some of my peers and by some of the people that I was shooting with. Like they didn't expect to see me. I mean, and I get it. I was young, I was pretty junior at that time. But now it's a lot different. Now there are so many women in this space, which I kind of, I'm grateful for. I kind of feel like I cracked the door open for them. Maybe that's a little bit
no,
egotistical of me to say, but
no,
I feel like I helped lay the groundwork in the CrossFit space to be like, no, we all belong here, and we can all bring really good work to the table. Um, and I think that like who I am as a person is I don't like being in front of the camera. I never have. I don't want to be a public figure. I never have. And so even though I was co-directing with Heber, Marston, and Ian at the time, I wasn't this prominent person at HQ because I didn't put myself out to be. And so I think a lot of this people that, have called for, or at the time were calling for Heber and Marston back, didn't realize that I was actually co-directing with them.
yeah,
So it wasn't so much of like people just didn't know. They didn't know that I edited a third of the documentaries, that with Heber and Marston and Ian.
yeah,
They don't know that I was out on these shoots capturing all that beautiful footage too. They like to, people assume it was the louder, more prominent figures that were doing all the work. But in reality, and this is how it is for every single documentary, there's a director, but these documentaries don't come to fruition by just one person. It's done by a huge team of people. Like usually I mean, at least 15 to 20 people that are very hands-on working on it from start to finish. It's not just one person.
that kind of leads me to my next subject. I wanted to go over making a documentary, and
Mm.
from the idea, or basically when someone says, "Okay, we have a budget," which sometimes happen quite late. No, but like the full spectrum of it, because I think people like, "Oh, you shoot the games for a week and then you're done." Like, how
Yeah.
hard can it be? Like,
No. Uh,
um, yeah,
well,
how does it start
so
from there to it being on iTunes?
So historically, so back when I was an employee at CrossFit and I was doing it with, Heber and Marston and Ian, it looked a lot different than it did, the last few documentaries that I've done. Back then, we would start capturing right after the games wrapped up. We would start doing athlete visits and do it all through the year and all through the season. And we would shoot for Road to the Games at the time, which was that, cool web series that we did. And then we'd also save footage for the documentaries. And we would pick out who we wanted, our characters.
How
Um,
would you do that? Like, how would you?
at
How,
the time, just based on who was interesting,
yeah,
who we thought was going to do well and who did what, like who came across well on camera.
yeah,
Um, like I know that a lot of people have been critical of us not featuring, certain athletes, but in reality, some people just they don't come across well. In big sports, there's media training, and CrossFit, we're not at that place
yeah,
yet where there's media training for athletes, and so there would be athletes that didn't that didn't come across very well on camera, that didn't have much to say, that were shy, things like that. And so it was like not everybody got featured. So a lot of who we picked was based on performance and who was, fun to watch. So somebody like
Yeah.
Josh Bridges, who we know wasn't a real, we didn't think he would win the games, but people
He's going to deliver on camera.
he's going to deliver on camera. People want to watch Josh Bridges, things like that. And so that's how we picked.
I'm going to come back to Stefan and your behind the scenes, but that's one of the things. Like back in 2011, when Stefan did the first behind the scenes, he was leaning so heavily on Josh Bridges because you always knew then you have something. He's going to say something outrageous, and he's going to talk bullshit. And I was looking at the field this year, and like who's going to do that? Well, you got Pat Vellner, and then Fikowski's going to say something like profound, and then kind of start to run short because you don't have. People are so self-critical and they're so scared of saying something that they'd rather say too little than maybe something can be used against them. And if they do, someone like Andrew Hiller, he's going to rip them apart. It's like, well, you want them to say something. If they say anything wrong, you're going to come at them. It's like it's so lopsided in that sense.
Yeah, not just that though, but it's also that it's a few days. It's the most important days of their year, and so a lot of people are in game mode and they don't really want to talk on camera. And so you kind of have to build up that rapport with them leading into the game so that they do feel comfortable with you at the games. And even then you might not get anything because it's dependent on, if I've shot with most podium finishers, if they're not doing as well as they would like to be doing, they're not going to talk to you. They're going to be pretty closed off. They're in their own world, which I get because that's not what they're there for. They're not there to be, filmed. They're there to try to win the CrossFit Games, and so they're not going to say much. If they're doing well, usually then they'll be much more chatty, things like that. So it's
we had you had me shoot the women last year at 2022 at the CrossFit Games behind the scenes, and Matt Fraser. I'm scared shitless of Fraser now. I'm not anymore, but I was. I hated talking to him because he's so intimidating, and he was also intimidating as a coach. And you have to go talk to Mal. And I'm like, can you do it? I'll go talk to someone else, please.
Yeah. Usually.
Then she won an event, and he was like, "Oh, now he's good." So it kind of depends. And then
it takes years to build up the learning how to operate in the belly of the Coliseum. It takes years to figure out when is the right time to put your camera in the face, when's the right time to pull back, when's the right time to ask a question, how to read body language, things like that. What questions to ask. It takes years to figure that out, honestly.
Yeah. And it's just like small details sometimes that you have to work out on the fly. 2021, you sent me to Pat Vellner's hotel room, and Michelle, his wife, had just given birth. They just got another baby, by the way. And she was breastfeeding, and I'm like, well, she was breastfeeding next to him, and I'm like, I need to shoot from this angle, but I need to angle him out. So it's like there's just so much stuff to encounter for in real time because we can't use that footage if she's But what about when you're done with the games? What happens then?
Usually the process is that I take a giant dry with me to the games that we immediately dump to at the games. It's usually something like 50 to 75 terabytes, which is a lot. And then as soon as I get home, we start sifting through footage. We start slating the interviews, which is essentially putting the questions over the interviews so that you can jump to any part of these 3-hour-long interviews and know what they're talking about. Pulling selects, which again is pulling the best of the best footage and putting it on a timeline so that it's quick and easy to grab what you want when you're actually starting to edit. And so that takes a few weeks. Usually we have typically taken a few weeks off before we get into work again.
To separate yourself from it a little bit.
Yeah, just rest. Just take a minute because games are it's a hard week.
Games are so hard.
Yeah, you don't sleep. It's pretty stressful. And so you usually want to take at least 2 weeks off after the games. And that's kind of how it goes if you work at, at the time working at CrossFit or working closely with CrossFit is that's when everybody really took some time off. The rest of the time you're on, we don't, back in the day when we worked there, it was like working for a startup. So we didn't take a lot of time off. And so it was just, you took time off right after the games. So yeah, we would take time off, start pulling selects, slating interviews, and then probably a month after the games is when you start getting into the edit. And then you're grinding for a few months.
Yeah, because people always ask, like, why isn't it out a week after the games? I don't think people have any idea how much footage we have.
Well,
and you can take a story in some different directions.
Yeah, and not just that, it depends on the platform too, and like the Heber and Marston turned out a documentary last year within a few days, which was crazy, which was really awesome, but the team looked different. They had a editor, she was there editing at the games, which again is incredible. It just wasn't a resource that we ever had historically. And then again, it's the platform for where it goes. So they put theirs to YouTube, I believe. Usually, we get ours we hand ours off to a distribution company, and we have to get it in the hands of the distribution company at least 3 months before it publishes.
Yeah, because that's the part people don't know about. So you have now a finished product, 90-minute, let's say 90 minutes movie, ready to go. And people's like, well, can we see it tomorrow? And like, no, you can't.
Yeah.
What happens then? Like,
so we hand it off to a distribution company.
Gravitas.
Gravitas. His use when I was doing documentaries for CrossFit, it would go to Gravitas. And then they are the ones that would work with VOD platforms and things like that, and getting it to iTunes. And so I would go through the whole process of collecting all the metadata for them, creating IMDb pages, getting them all promotional stills, promotional content, trailers like that, getting them all the assets that they would need in order for them to do their job. And then they would, I think the longest part, what takes the longest when it gets to distribution is they have to send it out for translation. So for all the subtitles in different languages, that's what they need their 3 months for. So, and
because sometimes it couldn't come on iTunes, and it was on American iTunes. It's not on Danish iTunes, but it was on Vimeo. Like, what's all that about? Like, why is it on everywhere?
It'll go live usually it goes live everywhere if they have all of the translations done. But the more time that you give them, the more time that they get all the translations done. So if they don't have the Danish subtitles ready, then that's why it won't go to iTunes there.
The subtitles was terrible.
Was
terrible.
It?
Yeah,
that's not something that's in our hands. That's the distribution company.
No. But yeah, and how can you like proofread it? You don't speak Danish, so it's like
no. And how can I proofread? When we're getting it translated into 75 different languages.
Yeah.
By the time I hand off the film, I don't want to ever watch it ever again.
You don't watch them?
No.
No.
No. Once I've finished it, I don't ever, because I've already watched it 50 times at that point, different variations of it, and so I don't want to ever watch them ever again. I don't think I've watched any of them since I handed them off to the distribution company.
I get what you're saying. You kind of get sick of it. Let's just go through a games week, because and he used to say, I hate the Mondays after the games, like Monday after games is done. It's a terrible day, but a shitty day at the CrossFit Games is still a day at the CrossFit Games. So somewhere there's someone bagging groceries, and you have to keep that in mind on the shitty days. When do we get up normally? We have a call time around 6:30, 7-ish.
On Mondays?
No, on most games days.
Oh, jeez. It depends.
Sometimes even earlier.
Yeah, sometimes, because usually if there's like an off-site event in the morning, then we're up at the butt crack of dawn. Oh boy. Hold on.
Yeah.
No. Go head on downstairs.
Which one is it?
I don't know.
Is it Mia?
I think it's Damon. Go downstairs, bud. Oh, that's funny. Yeah, it would be early. Usually our days start at like at least 6 a.m. and go until at least 9 p.m., 10 p.m. that night.
Yeah, and then we meet up around 9:30. We have dinner. You always leave. You don't ever want to have dinner with us.
No, I'm always so tired. I need sleep.
Yeah,
I have high sleep needs.
I have that week. I need I need the social interaction of Tyson, Torn,
Yeah,
whoever's on the team. Yeah,
yeah,
Salvi, Ross, the Slippery Hippo. Yeah, all those
yeah.
guys. So,
I
so
get
I
that.
need I need the other thing.
Yeah.
And then we go through of probably around 5 days of shooting across the games normally, and then comes Monday,
Mhm.
and we have to do interviews.
Mhm.
That it. So those interviews you see on in across the documentaries is most of them are done Monday morning through evening
Mhm.
in somewhere in Madison at a hotel,
Yeah.
and we start as early as possible. And you
Mhm.
basically sit in a room and you shoot all the interviews. At least that's what you did in 2021. The other years got a little bit different due
I
to we
think
did Miles
22.
Madison.
Yeah, I think that was the only year that we have ever split it up between multiple rooms, which was
Yeah,
awesome. But yeah, usually we start about, I think the first interview we usually get going is around 7 a.m. and we will be there interviewing until about 9, 10 p.m. at night.
yeah, that was Brent Fikowski.
Yeah.
Um, and I wasn't supposed to be there that day, but Jay was pulled off to do something else. And Tyson called me, "Yo, can you be here in 5 minutes?" And I'd gotten like an hour's sleep.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, that's the other
I,
thing is you usually go to the after party. We don't because
yeah,
I
and
don't.
Tyson
I'm
gives
like,
me
I
a
have to be interviewing tomorrow. I can't go. I gotta go
yeah, and
sleep.
I wasn't supposed to work. And then when Tyson gave me like an all access and free drinks wristband, and like, oh, let's go. And
Yeah.
then 1 hour sleep, and I came in the room, and I was like, Tyson, you need to go get me coffee and a lot of it. And Brent was just cracking up about it. But
Was that in the
no,
morning? I thought Brent came at night. I can't remember.
no, I have a photo of me. Brent was the first interview.
Was this what
Yeah,
year was it?
2021.
Oh, okay. Okay,
Yeah.
2022 was the year that I think he was our final interview of the day.
Oh yeah. Well, that was the year I did interviews as well. So it was me, Torrin, you, Kathy did interviews.
Mhm.
So that was a completely different one. And then
Yeah.
you basically stand there for running a camera for 12 hours. And yeah,
Mhm. Yeah, you don't see the sunlight on Monday.
do you
Yeah,
enjoy it?
cold. You. Hmm?
Like, do you enjoy it shooting the games?
Do I enjoy it?
Yeah,
Oh, yeah. Oh, it's the best week of the year. If you
yeah.
get to see your friends, you're running on an adrenaline high all week. Really exhausting. Your feet hurt by the end of the week, but it's really freaking fun. I love it.
We always, you and I always have a step count
Yeah,
competition.
it doesn't count though because you have long legs and you usually go for runs before. So
No,
you cheat.
I went for a run one time because I was behind.
Well, you go for runs like half the time. You go like walk from the hotel to get your
Yeah,
step count up. You cheat.
I'm just doing whatever is needed.
Yeah, you cheat. That's
Yeah,
called cheating. So I don't play that game with you anymore.
no. How much do you prep for those interviews? Like, do you write like across during the season? Like, start prepping for those interviews?
I don't prep.
No, fucking hate you for that. How can you do that? Like, you
Because we're
basically
back.
sit with some of these. Yeah, we sit
Yeah,
there for 2 hours.
at least sometimes 3. Um, because you're back there with the athletes, um, you're kind of experiencing everything with them, and so you are able to, you know, pull from the week, um, the experiences the athletes have during the week, and ask them questions based on that. There's usually some generalized, you get a feel for some of the storylines, some of the overarching storylines, the broad ones throughout the week. Like maybe this year really tested mental toughness. Let's ask them everybody a question regarding mental toughness or whatever.
Yeah,
Um, you can't really prep for it because you don't. Even though the CrossFit documentaries function less like an actual, like your more classic documentary. Um, it's still a documentary. You're still documenting. You're not foraging these narratives that you came up with ahead of time. You're there watching things play out, watching storylines play out, and you're letting that shape the story that you tell. And so, there's no way that I would feel like I could, know what to ask going into the games. It's more of like looking back on what just happened this week. Okay, these are the things that stand out to me. These are what I'm going to ask all the athletes. And
who's the most fun to interview?
Vellner.
Yeah, I knew he was
He
going to
makes
say
me
that.
laugh every time. Oh, I
Yeah,
love. I tell him all the time he's not allowed to retire. God, he's a riot.
yeah.
He's so fun. So I love interviewing Pat.
I want him to win so badly.
We all do. I think he's the people's
Like
champ.
yeah, but like I would love to see Ricky win, but I think Pat's probably his last chance to. He has to
I
do it
don't know.
now. Yeah, I've been saying that for 5 years, so whatever.
No, that's the thing is by the end of the week, by Sunday morning, you've developed such a strong bond with a lot of the athletes. You kind of want everybody to win.
That is true. That is
You
true.
don't have a lot of bias by the end. You're rooting for everyone.
Which documentary has been your favorite? And just your favorite.
Probably Next Gen. I really enjoyed that one. That was a really fun, but the vibe was different that year. I think
What year is that? Is
21.
that 21? Okay.
Yeah, everybody was coming back from COVID and a lot of,
Yeah.
so a lot of people, everybody just seemed really happy to be there. It was much more laid back. Everybody was so stoked. And so just the vibe was great. And we
It
were
was
able to get,
yeah. I was going to
no,
ask you what was your favorite games, and for me, it's definitely 2021. I was the only European that was being or non-American that was being brought out.
Mhm,
Tyson made it happen somehow. Tyson
mhm,
and Will
mhm.
Wilson. And I just remember I came to the airport in great time, and I was like, "I'm going to Chicago," and they're like, I don't think so, buddy. Yeah, I got an exemption from the Homeland Security. And they're like, "You got a what?" Yeah. Can we see it? And no, I don't have it physically on me. You have to call Homeland Security and confirm. And they just look at me like, "What the fuck is this guy talking about? He's not going to get on a plane." And they called Homeland Security, and like the minute before they closed the manifest of the flight, and you can't get on when that's closed. Like, yeah, good to go. And I just have to run through my gate, and
Yeah,
made it on
uh,
there.
that was a good
And
year. It was a really fun year.
it was so good to be back after not doing it in.
2020.
It felt like but it felt like 2 years because 2019 was such an off year.
Yeah.
You weren't there in 2019.
Yeah. Yeah, I
It's
wasn't
just
there in 2019. I was there in 20. I worked the games in 2020. But again,
yeah,
that was a very different year. It was shooting it. It was only Cause, myself, Mars, Heber,
Heber,
and Michael Dalton, and that
Dalton.
was it.
Yeah,
So it was a very, very small crew. It was, it only 5 athletes from each division. So
yeah.
it felt very different. So yeah, I felt like 2 years off in a lot of ways. And so it felt like we hadn't been there since for 3 years. And so
I
2021 felt a lot like coming home.
I feel like that year also all the photographers were shooting photos of each other as well. Just like that happiness of seeing each other again. I have so
Yeah.
many photos of myself from that year. It was just like we did our job, and we did a great job, and made a great documentary. But it just that year is like it's just a standout year.
Yeah.
What's been your worst CrossFit Games? And
Worst?
yeah,
Probably 2019 because I wasn't there.
well, that doesn't count.
Worst. I don't think I would say I have a worst one. I think everyone is really great in a lot of ways and really awful in a lot of ways. Yeah, I wouldn't say I have. Yeah, everything. I mean, 22 was hard because there was a lot of stuff happening behind the scenes that wasn't ideal, but our crew was rad and we were having
Yeah,
so much fun on that front. So again, like there's just 21 was just all around awesome. 2020 was hard because it was in the COVID bubble and I had 1-year-old twins. And so there was a lot of
yeah.
complexity there. But again, I was just grateful to be there. It was a lot of fun to be, experience this CrossFit Games that we had never experienced before, and there will never be anything like it again. So that was
No.
really cool. So I wouldn't say that there's one that stands out as particularly bad or anything like that.
For me, it's definitely the last one, 2023. It was.
Uh,
I was at probably the lowest point of my life and going through a breakup and just
mm,
couldn't. I've spoken to you about it,
mhm.
and it's just like life just got the better of me in that
Yeah.
sense. And I was actually I visited you 2 months prior to that. I
Mhm.
came out and I was just broken. And
Yeah.
Charlie wanted me to come, and it's like I remember when I came out, Tyson took me took me for a drive. Like, hey, honey, we'll be out for 15 minutes. And you said, okay. And 2 hours later, we went to a wine tasting. We came
Yeah.
back and you just looked at us like, 15 minutes, my ass.
Yeah.
No, but it was, I was really close to canceling, going to the games in 2023. It was just life had taken such a toll on me, and she's listening, so it's all good. But then I heard Tyson was maybe coming. That kind of helped, but I was still like, I can't do it. I can't do it. And then I don't know where I heard it, but somewhere I heard about Sevan maybe doing behind the scenes again.
Mhm.
And I think I texted you about that, and she said, "Yeah, I'm doing it with him." And like, "Yeah, I'll come. I'll come."
Yeah.
If
Yeah,
he's
I
there,
was
I'm in good hands. I feel so safe, and yeah,
yeah, last year was a lot of fun. For me, it was.
yeah.
I'm sorry that you didn't have a good experience.
Well,
It
no,
was,
but it was. I
yeah,
did have a good
well,
experience at the games, but you always have a good experience at the games. It was just like leading up to it, and it was just so weird, like doing different stuff and being.
yeah,
That's the first year I didn't have like I could walk anywhere I wanted. It was like
right,
restrictions, and there's just a lot of stuff going on, and
right.
and I think it's like that
Me
in
too.
anything.
That was the
Yeah,
first year ever that I was on. It was the first time in 10 years that I was not there for CrossFit HQ. And
yeah,
and honestly, it was a breath of fresh air in a lot of ways. It was really fun to be, in the media room with all the outside media for the first time, and to realize it's like, there's a lot things can be very tense during the games with the internal,
yeah,
CrossFit team. It's very stressful because everybody's trying to put on a good show and everybody's trying to do their best work. And
yeah,
and I think anybody that's on the inside, really, we kind of take it for granted. We don't treat it with we treat it with respect, but I don't think we treat it with the gratitude that it might deserve being on the inside. And so it can be a very negative space internally. And so to be in the outside media room for the first time and everybody was just so stoked to be there.
yeah,
It was really cool. And it was the first year that, I haven't been there to do a documentary. Um, and that was mostly by choice. I was given the opportunity to, you know, make a bid, but it was the first time in about, in CrossFit history that CrossFit had decided that they were not going to fund a documentary anymore. And that whatever media team came in to do the documentary, they still wanted to do it, but they were going to have to self-fund it, and at the time, last year when I was asked to make a bid to self-fund the documentary and bring my team in and do it, I had to take a step back and really evaluate whether or not that was something that I wanted to do. And ultimately, I decided that I was like, I'm not going to do it this year. I need to take a break, and yeah, it just wasn't something that I was interested in pursuing, mostly out of exhaustion. Just really wanting to take a year off, being very mentally and emotionally depleted, and just needing to rest. And so when Savon said that he was potentially going to be doing the behind the scenes, I was like, I will come. Like, I want to
yeah,
work on something. I want to work on something else, something that I'm stoked on, something that I know the community is would be very excited about. I was like, I want to work. I want to do this with you. And so
yeah.
Savon was like, oh, hell yeah. Like, come out with me, come help me, And so once he got the green light to do it, it was pretty exciting. It was a lot of fun. So
I feel like I just watched a few episodes of the Sevan behind the scenes. It's on YouTube. You can go watch it. I think you should. I think you should also go watch the old Sevan, just to get some sort of context as to who is Sevan.
yeah.
Is it Sevan or Sevan?
Yeah.
What is
That's
it?
a good way of putting it.
All right. But it brings me back to one of the things from about talking about Josh Bridges and Patrick Vellner. In the beginning of it, it kind of has a slow start to it, and it's really hard for him to get the same kind of rapport as he was getting 12 years ago. It gets better. It gets better as like people come around to it.
Mhm.
But also I think back then it was such a unique look into CrossFit and behind the scenes. I feel like
Mhm.
there's a lot of there's a lot of people behind the scenes. You get a lot of access these days, and maybe that's a good thing. But sometimes it can be hard to tell a unique story because everyone has their own media team. Everyone's shooting their own documentary, and
Yeah.
there's just it's a it's a little bit depleted sometimes. Like there's no new stuff to be made.
Yeah.
Can you get a sense of that sometimes?
No, not personally. And I know this is awful of me, but I don't consume content.
No, that's
I don't watch anything. I don't pay any
That's
attention
true.
to it. It's been my whole life for the past 10 plus years, working at CrossFit, being married to someone who works at CrossFit, doing CrossFit, all my friends being CrossFitters, you know, all that kind of stuff. That at the end of the day, when I'm consuming any kind of media, I don't want to be watching CrossFit. So I don't. Yeah. I mean, I've kind of, like about a year ago, I kind of hit this, I made a post about it recently, this point in my life where I was able, or I had the decision that I could either keep going, continue to take on this work, continue to be stretched too thin, continue to be exhausted and overwhelmed and burnt out essentially, and keep going, or I could just take a massive step back and kind of, you know, say no to a lot of things. And so for the first time in 10 years, I took a huge step back. And from there, I've actually gotten to this point where I don't even want to watch TV. Like, I don't want to watch movies. I don't really have an interest in watching TV shows, like anything like that. I don't want to do that. I want to turn off everything as much as possible. And so it's been like that for the past year of just, I haven't been consuming a lot of media. I feel very out of the loop, but it feels very needed.
Yeah. You also it's been your life, like you say, for a decade.
Yeah. You know,
What's been yeah, go ahead.
Well, I was just gonna say it's been interesting to watch, you know, like the public reaction to Mal sitting out this upcoming season, and people starting to recognize that pursuing sport at such a young age can be pretty detrimental. And I kind of feel like that might be the same thing for everybody. You know, I've been actively pursuing this very hard since I was 15, 16. And this is the first time in my life last year that I stopped, that I was like, oh, I need to rest, because it's been like, my goal has been the same thing since I was like 15, 16 years old, and working my ass off, you know, since then to try to get somewhere. And so it was, you know, burnout's real. It was gnarly. And so it's like, I really had to take a break.
What was the first like sign? Did you experience like physical signs, or did Tyson talk to you?
I don't think that there was anything that stood out. It was just, everything was slowly progressing until this point where, when I got to this point where I could make a decision, I had been working on a certain project for a few years, which was a really, really big project and really exciting project. And early last year, we came to this point where I was under the assumption, when I had signed on to the project, that at that point last year, we would be coming to a close. It would, after about 2 years of work, we would be done with it by the end of last year. And we realized that that was not going to be the case, that the scope was changing, that it was going to go from, we're going to be done here in a minute, to actually, it looks like we're going to be doing this for a few more years. And so when that was presented to me, I was like, yeah, I don't think I can do that. Like, I think this is where we might need to part ways on this project, because I don't think I can keep committing to this thing in the way that you guys need me to, you know. And so once that happened, and I took a step back from that, and then a couple months later, CrossFit was like, okay, we're also changing the scope of things. We're not going to fund this anymore. You'll have to, you know, whoever comes in to do this is going to self-fund it, make a bid. And I was like, I don't think I can do that. And so I walked away from 2 big projects, and it was the first time that I was like, oh my God, like, when all of that was lifted off my shoulders, that's when I realized, like, oh, things got bad. Like, I was like hating people that I didn't want to hate. I was hating the work. I was up all night tossing and turning with anxiety over things. I realized that I wasn't doing as much with my kids because anytime I wanted to take the kids to the beach, I felt like I shouldn't take them to the beach right now. I should be working, and to have that weight lifted off of me of like, oh, I don't have these things hanging over me anymore, and to just freely be able to go do the things that, I needed to do or wanted to do. That's when I realized how burnt out I had been. I don't think I realized it when I was in it.
No, you're definitely you had a shorter fuse in 2022 than I've seen before. Let's just leave it at let's just leave it at that.
I was not at my best. No.
Oh,
But I didn't
you're
realize it then. I
no,
can
but
look it
you're
back now and recognize it, but at the time I did not realize it. I did not realize how tired I was.
you can get pretty feisty and you're pretty stubborn, and I'm stubborn as well. So it's a good match.
Yeah, but it's
Um,
water off a duck's back. We're always good. We're always
oh
good.
yeah, we're always good.
We
What's
can
been
geek out sometimes.
yeah, what's been your most fun project to work on in your career?
Most fun. Probably the road to the games. I think those were the most
Yeah.
enjoyable. But again, I think I was fresh back then.
And
I was
CrossFit,
excited to be
if you're listening, CrossFit, bring it back. Just bring it back.
Yeah. I don't think they will, but I don't think they ever will. I think it's different too, though. I don't think that I think somebody else would need to do it for it to be as successful. And I don't think it could be a CrossFit HQ thing anymore.
No, maybe not. But it's there's a formula there on how to do it, and just
Oh, it was so easy. I
duplicate.
mean, I say it all the time. I'm like, man, all you have to do, and this is what made the road to the games work so great. You just need 1 or 2 camera ops out there. It doesn't have to be like crazy. You don't have to have pin mics to people. Like I know like people want to do like the F1 stuff, but at the end of the day, it's not about the quality of the content. I'm sorry, it's not about the quality in the sense of it doesn't need to be shot on the best cameras. It doesn't need anything like that. It's the quality of the stories. It's how close are you to the athletes? Like what kind of content are they going to give you? And at the time, when we were doing Road to the Games, everybody was very open. Everybody knew who we were, and so athletes were stoked to shoot with us. They knew we were going to do a good job, and so people were much more open. We did stuff outside of the gym. It was fun. It made you feel as though you were there with the athletes, that you were their friends too. And so
Which
simple.
episode is your favorite?
I don't think I have a favorite episode.
Oh.
Probably no. I take that back. Probably the final one that we did in 2018, because we knew. I think it was a Tia Katrin one.
Okay.
It was the final episode, and it was right before the games in 2018. It was literally like a week before the games in 2018 that Heber and I edited it, and Tyson had pulled us into the office, Marston, Heber, and I, and was like, "Hey, no. We were all still working at CrossFit at that point."
Okay.
But in 2018, Tyson pulled us into the office and was like, "Hey, I just want you guys to know things are going to change. Like, I don't know how, but things are going to change." And at that point, we knew the writing was on the wall. And so once it was at the end of the day on like right before we were leaving for, Madison. And Heber and I kind of looked at each other, and Heber goes, if this is the last Road to the Games episode we ever do, like, let's make sure this one goes out with a bang. And so him and I, like, we busted our asses on that final episode, and it was a pretty damn good one. And it was a good one and an emotional one, because I think we knew in our hearts it was the last one we would ever do.
I think people underestimate as well how close we are to the athletes and how much emotions goes into it. Like, obviously you've worked a lot with Tia. For me, it will always be Annie, because it's just a close friend, and like shooting Murph and seeing Annie almost pass away. Like, I have no words for that. How insane that experience is, because you don't get that shooting other sports. It's just not like that.
Yeah.
I think I'm gonna wrap it up. I'm just gonna say CrossFit has been a huge part of my life for the last 12 years, mostly due to your husband. So thank him when you go out the door. But more so than all the experiences, all the moments, all the CrossFit games, I've shot on 4 different continents, 14 different countries. It's you, it's Ross, it's Torn, it's Tyson, it's the people, and it's the community. It's always about that. And people need to remember that in their box. It's about the community. It's about people. Yeah,
and I think a stance that I've taken is, when CrossFit HQ wins, we all win. I think there's a lot of room for people to feel angry at CrossFit. I have a lot of reason to be angry at CrossFit HQ. Everybody does, you know, we all think we do. But at the end of the day, when CrossFit HQ wins, we all win. You know, we need to be there to, like, I just want to be the kind of person, if I continue to bring something into the CrossFit world or the CrossFit space, I want it to be something positive. I want it to be something that's going to help move things in the right direction. Bless Hiller and Sevon. I think a lot of the stuff they're doing is great. But it's not my approach, you know, and so it is the community, it is the people, and when someone wins, we all win. And so it's, you know, what Craig said, do the right things for the right people for the right reasons, you know? So.
Mic drop.
Right? Like,
yeah.
There's too many good people still fighting for this damn thing. And so it's like, I think it's our responsibility to keep fighting for it. To bring something of value back to it, give people something of value, give people something to be excited about, you know? I want it to win. I want it to all win. I don't do work for CrossFit anymore. But I still want them to win. I still want them to do good work. I still want things to be successful. You know, I want the games to be successful. I want affiliates to be successful, you know, because there's so many damn good people still there, you know?
So before I start crying, Mariah, thank you so much for being on my podcast.